This video can never be shown.
Hi, I'm John.
And I'm Meredith.
This is No Talking in the Library, slightly less than previously distanced, but still distanced and actually in the library, so that's a good thing.
I'm excited because I just literally 30 seconds ago came up with our topic of today, which is movies we love that we would never admit to.
Right. We've done, I think, versions of this in the past, or maybe it's just we've talked about it in the past. I don't know if I'll. There's a couple of things I have in mind, but we'll just. Do you want to start, or should I?
Oh, I think you should definitely start.
Okay. Jeez. Since we're going to do a couple, I think a movie that I would say that I love, that I really love, that John Carter movie. It's a really horrible movie. It's, as a matter of fact, one of the most startlingly gigantic box office flops in the history of flops. I mean, it defines a lot of money spent to no good effect.
This will be the third time we've talked about Taylor Kitsch in the last 4 weeks, I think.
Right, I know, it's a kind of underground theme for us. You have to, okay, so I think that a lot of the problem with this movie was the expectations that were raised by the fact that it was this monstrously big budget thing, and the John Carter novels are for boys, especially boys who grew up, in the 80s. Something that you remember quite fondly or whatever. The movie was it's bad. I mean, I'm just going to say, on purely objective terms, it's not good. But it's also entertaining. It's not, so there's movies that are kind of meant to be terrible, right? If you've ever seen Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, on no theory could the people have been making that and being like, no, this is going to be real art. They had to know it was terrible. This movie, clearly they meant to be good and wasn't, but that's fine. But if you just sort of put aside what you expect, or what the expectation that was created of the movie, it's actually not a bad action movie. I mean, it's not, it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark. Let's just be clear, whatever. But it's a really entertaining movie, but one of those movies that has a reputation for utter badness. That means that I'm fairly certain that up to the point that we're here online talking to perhaps tens of people, I've never actually said to anyone but you, even Katrina, my wife, does not know that I like this movie, because it's too humiliating for me to put it in the DVD player.
Okay, if you were to be recommending this movie, can you say one thing about the movie that might be worthwhile to someone? Are the special effects good? Is there a standout supporting cast member?
It's hard to point to the cast members, and it's mostly another big problem with this movie is that the writing in it is pretty pulp quality. I think that the special effects are actually pretty entertaining, and usually I'm not a person who's totally, let me go see some eye candy. I remember going and seeing, what was that movie that came out a few years ago, the one that was based on the French graphic novel Valerian?
Oh, the Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets, or right. Whatever.
Yeah, that movie was pretty, but boring. Yeah, there's some, I think, really entertaining special effects in a way that doesn't. I think they got kind of wrapped up in that and didn't notice maybe that the script seems like it was written by a 12-year-old who had gotten tired of playing Dungeons and Dragons or something. But yes, it's a pretty movie to watch, and it's if you're just looking for something that's not going to tax you intellectually or emotionally. I actually own the DVD. This is another fact of which my wife is blissfully unaware. Like I keep it sort of hidden away in a stack. If she ever finds it, I'm going to have some explaining to do, I think.
What? How did this get here? I don't know anything about this.
Right. Yeah, I think I must have, it was in the donation box and I actually accidentally picked it up.
My number one, like, I'm usually not one to call things guilty pleasures because I kind of the mind that if you enjoy something, then you enjoy it. But I absolutely love and never admit that I love the 2012 film adaptation of the Nicholas Sparks book, The Lucky One, starring Zac Efron and Taylor Schilling. A pre Orange is the New Black, or possibly right as it was starting, Taylor Schilling. I have read every Nicholas Sparks book.
That I know.
I have seen most of the movie adaptations, of which they used to do pretty much annually around Valentine's Day, but have ceased that sort of tradition. And most of them are bad. The one with Julianne Hough is like a standout of terribleness. But for whatever reason, I love The Lucky One. I own it on Blu-ray. I watch it in the dark of night when no one is around. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen it. Something about this one is one of the more, like, mild is not everything Nicholas Sparks is mild. And of course he's known for his pretty white people who die right before they're about to kiss type books. In this one, the sort of villain dies at the end, spoiler alert.
Right.
So it's not like a tearjerker, it's just sort of like happy, and like throughout the movie, just like sort of happy, nice things happen. It's just like this couple sort of going on dates in like the most gorgeous New Orleans, like bayou setting. So it's just like perpetual sunrise and sunset. Like the entire movie is shot either like in like was it called the golden hour? What are the photographers like to shoot pictures? The whole movie is shot in those like beautiful sun-drenched like drapey trees, and it's just like nice. And no matter how many times I see this movie, like I just is very, very it's like a big bowl of like ice cream or just something extremely comforting. And the music is actually surprisingly good as well. So Lucky One. Highly, I don't know that I don't want to say I highly recommend it, but I love it.
Right. Is The Notebook a Nicholas Sparks?
Yes, so that's the one that people usually do think of when they think of Nicholas Sparks movies, and that one actually has managed to have a reputation of like perennial Valentine's Day favorite.
Right.
It's just, again, not my favorite because it has the, of course, awfully sad Alzheimer ending. But just for whatever reason, I like that The Lucky One is happy, and it's just Zac Efron. It's what's not to like.
Right. Well, I have an admission to make since we're on this topic, and I think I may have like said this to you before, but this is not the kind of thing I would like normally tell people. I really. A few years ago, I was lying around watching TV. It was the holidays, and I forget how I ended up watching like normal people TV, but what should come on but Love Actually. And when I saw the beginning, I'm like, oh no, I'm not. Have I really got to this place in my life? But in fact, and okay, I was too lazy to like reach over and try and find where the remote was, and I ended up watching it, and I actually quite enjoy it. So now when it comes on, which is around the holidays, you have like at least 5 opportunities to see it if you're watching TV. It's a movie that does not fall into genres that, like, I'm not a romantic comedy sort of person by and large, but I would pay to watch Emma Thompson read the phone book. I kind of like Hugh Grant.
He's at his like most Hugh Grantiness in this movie, so if that's the kind of thing you enjoy, overall I find Love Actually to be like parts of it are enjoyable and like other parts are unbearable.
Right.
It's not
right.
I do not make it an annual tradition for myself to watch Love Actually.
I just sort of let it happen. But I will say about Hugh Grant was in which of the Jane Austen movies?
Sense and Sensibility.
Sense and Sensibility, yeah.
With Emma Thompson as well.
Right, yes, exactly. This is why I'm thinking about it. But the thing I remember about his performance in that movie was that he was trying to seem sort of reticent, but mostly he just looked like he had to go to the bathroom and was like sort of bouncing back from foot to foot, waiting until he could go, like disengage himself from the conversation, just go to the restroom. This is a time, to sort of investigate stuff that, you've probably by this point in the lockdown or social distancing or whatever, gone through most of the things that you normally would watch. I know that I've rewatched a lot of things. I'm probably on the verge of rewatching Gilmore Girls for about the fourth time, because that's something Katrina and I can get together on. As a matter of fact, like we've been going through Grey's Anatomy, catching up on the seasons that I haven't actually seen, like most of the stuff after like the first 5 or whatever. But I've been going a lot through Canopy lately, and one of the things that I noticed was new on Canopy was Winter's Bone, which is a movie that I saw quite really serendipitously. I was in Spokane, where my wife's family live, and we were just at loose ends one afternoon. We went to the theater, and this was back before Jennifer Lawrence was a well-known figure. Went to see it. Absolutely a brilliant movie, in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, probably.
Yeah, I think we were both on the record in stating our severe enjoyment of Winter's Bone.
Yeah, severe is right. Because it's really about some fairly unhappy people, and it's got that brilliant kind of flat color cinematography. So it just looks like, and I don't know that much about Central Pennsylvania, but I can tell you, as a person who came from Eastern Washington, that the environment that she lives in Missouri or Arkansas or wherever it is really not all that different from rural Eastern Washington, I have to say. So, but one other thing I did want to bring up was, I've alluded probably previously and talked to you sort of in person about my fascination with the sort of synth music performer Gary Numan. Gary Numan, for people will probably remember him from he had a couple of sort of charting records in the 80s. One was Cars, the single from Pleasure Principle, which is a kind of new wave take on road rage. And another one was Our Friends Electric. It's funny, there's a sort of interview piece with him that's online now, where he's like, well, Our Friends Electric is about like robot prostitutes or something like that, but I think the people at the BBC didn't really read the lyrics very closely, so they're like, yeah, sure, go on top of the pops, who cares? But Gary Numan has gone through a number of phases in his career, and he's gone in a slightly heavier direction, but starting with his last record, which is called Savage, Songs from Damaged Land or something like that, which came out in 2018. He offered this sort of subscription thing where if you pre-ordered I think the sort of bottom level thing was the deluxe CD, then you could get access to his sort of making of content, and every few days he would post, just sort of studio updates or demo versions of the songs, or he would play little bits of the songs, or sometimes he would play the whole song and say this is the version as it stands now. We've got this other things to do with it, which I think is a really cool concept. I bet there are other artists who do it. I want to sort of look around and see, just for informational purposes. But I think it's a kind of a cool thing to do for artists, especially in the sort of era of coronavirus, where they just did a survey, I think, of people who go to a lot of shows, and 60% of people said that they would be unlikely to go back to a show until there's a vaccine. So this is a really devastating thing for artists and for the venues that put them on, and for lots of people in the business. But I think this is a kind of a cool way for artists to connect with their fans in a way that they otherwise might not, and to give their fans a kind of window into the creative process, which I think a lot of times, which is a new sort of kind of different frontier, I think, for a lot of artists. Now, it turned out also in one of his more recent posts on the new record that he's working on, that he had put up a sort of he played a full version of one of the songs in one of the videos, and somebody had downloaded it and posted it, and he had managed to get them to take it down or whatever. So he's not doing full versions anymore, but it's still a really cool thing, and it's really I want to look around and see if other artists are doing this, because I think this is a kind of a fun way that you can sort of build yourself into the narrative of musicians who you like.
To circle back on the topic of music and Winter's Bone, it's actually first of all, the soundtrack is phenomenal, and the music, there was a composer, but he worked with actual Ozark hillbilly musicians, and there's a scene in the movie where the main character Jennifer Lawrence plays is looking for her father, and so she keeps going different places and trying to talk to different people to try and find out where he is, and she ends up at this home, God knows where, and there's a group playing a song in a home, very traditional sounding, but that band is it's Meredith Cisco and Blackberry Winter, I think is the name of the group, but they are the musician. I think Missouri Waltz is the name of the song that is on the soundtrack, but it's just one more every detail of that movie is so well crafted to really put you in the place of that movie. It's the kind of movie that when you're done watching it, it sticks with you, and that's just another aspect of it. So
yeah, it's a sort of hero's journey movie in a kind of a weird way. Once again, Jennifer Lawrence is trying to find her father, or find what happened to her father, and she just goes from really depressing environment to really depressing environment. I think at the very beginning she's talking to an army recruiter, which and there's nothing wrong with joining the army, obviously, except that if your economic and life prospects are so bad that that's the only thing, right? That's that you have as a possibility. I mean, that's just a difficult situation or whatever. But yeah, I think the music really meshes incredibly well with the way it was shot. The cinematography just conveys this sort of very hopeless sort of environment that she's in, and it all comes together in this really incredible package. It's just an unbelievable movie, and it's kind of sad. I know we've talked about this at other times, but that Jennifer Lawrence has then she's made a ton of money and more power to her. You know, I have every respect for her for doing that. But I think she's taken some projects that were not necessarily like all that great in terms of artistic merit. Whereas this is, I mean, I'd be interested to know sort of what the story. She hadn't really done very much before this.
No, other than I think she was on some dumb TV show. I shouldn't say dumb. I don't know anything about it. This was like her breakout, and then immediately afterward, she got cast in the Hunger Games, of course. But I would not even be able to name the last thing Jennifer Lawrence has done, which is really disappointing because I really do think that Winter's Bone and her performance in it is quite possibly like one of the finest performances like of the decade.
Yeah, it's really startling in a kind of dystopian way, and I think a gut move for a young actress making her name to take a role like that. Where it could very easily be seen as a kind of a niche movie. You know, I saw it with my wife and my father-in-law, and all of us at the end were like, "Oh my!" You know, it's walked out into the sunshine in downtown Spokane. And we're like, "Oh my God, what just happened here?" Like, so yeah, it's really, and you can see it via Canopy through the library's website. It's a really great use of your time. Once again, something it's very intense. It's a very intense movie. So you need to sort of steel yourself. I mean, it's not going to be like.
Just watch the Lucky One after you're done to temper.
Right, that'll be the world's most bizarre double feature.
The Chaser. Now, the other thing that I definitely think is worth noting is that this Winter's Bone was directed by a female director, which is unfortunately is still a notable fact, Deborah Granick. I haven't seen Leave No Trace, which was her most recent follow-up. Have you?
I haven't. I've heard it's good.
I don't know why I haven't seen it. It's got Ben Foster, I think, right?
Right. Yeah. So maybe that's a project we can undertake for our next our next go around. All right. Well, I feel like I've really bared my soul.
Yes.
I'm going to have to make sure that
this video can never be shown.
Right. Exactly. Or I must hide my copy of John Carter so that it's not seized and destroyed in the name of higher art or whatever. All right. Well, I think that's all from us. So we'll see you next time around.
See you next time.